Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics. Welcome back to Foundation Paper Piecing Series 2 for December. And of course, we all just can't wait for all of the December projects. Christmas, of course, is in the front of our minds. And as makers, we're so busy. This is our happy time. I could not resist the Christmas tree where we all gather around giving gifts that maybe we've been thinking about giving all year long. So this is actually 4 of the Christmas trees from Lila Gardunia. She's been one of the designers we've been kind of tapping into at times throughout this series. A wonderful lady, very talented designer. And we have, I guess, chosen the Christmas tree again because I love the gathering. That's, to me, what is the essence of Christmas. And of course, Christ right in the middle of that, right? Prayers of being together and praying for each other and praying, of course, for the new year that's about to come. So just like we've been doing all along, no mystery here if you've been all along in this series, but if you're just now, maybe because it's December and you're wanting to create, maybe you're just finding this for the first time. Welcome to Shabby Fabrics. Our team here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho works every day to produce amazing content with you in mind right from the beginning. And our patterns and our kits, hey, that's the place to be because your kit will include this beautiful pattern. You'll have a full color image, full color instructions. And one of the things that we're getting so much positive feedback on is that the foundation papers that are part of foundation paper piecing are included in your kit. If you buy a foundation paper piecing pattern or book, you know that normally you have to go find a Xerox machine. You have to go buy the foundation papers. And by the way, we use Carol Doak. It's the gold standard of foundation papers. That's what you're getting in your kit. But again, if you're just buying a book off the shelf or at maybe someplace you found at a quilt show or a quilt shop, historically, you're now driving to go get that Xeroxed, hoping it's at the right scale. Who has time for that? We want to be makers. We want to sit down and start creating right now. And these kits make that possible. And after you follow the instructions and get all of your fabrics cut precisely to the size they need to be, notice how all these fabrics have stickers. Those are included as well. So as you make a cut, you're stickering that fabric. As you make your next cut, you're stickering that fabric so that you don't get lost in the process, which is easy to do, as I discovered. My first journey into foundation paper piecing, I was pretty much confused at the process and lost about where the fabrics were and what I should be grabbing for next. So if you're brand new, head back to the first part of the series. Remember, I said this is series 2. We also did this as our initial foundation paper piecing series. Those beginning videos are going to take the deep dive into this process. So today it's just a review. I'm well organized with my stickers. We'll be doing the block here that has a little bit of the garland on it. I wanted to show you that even with these small little pieces of the red here that are our garland shown in this one, it's the same process. Don't let those small shapes intimidate you. So we'll walk our way through that. And one of the things I found most confusing about foundation paper piecing is that the numbers are on this side, but you're actually putting the fabric on the back. I'm thinking, how does that work? Well, let me just briefly remind you of that. Maybe it's been a few months since you foundation paper piece. So we know that with our very first piece, we simply need to glue that to our paper to get started on this journey. So we have our fabric E1, and that's a nice kind of brown. That is going to be our tree trunk here. And I'm just putting a little bit of glue with the idea being that we're trying to cover up, and I can hold that up to the light, or if you have a light box, that's a great thing to bring out right now. You can just lay that right on top of that, and you're going to see the fabric from behind, and you'll see the paper. I'm pretty limited on space, so I'm not able to do that. But if you do have one at home, you'll see what I mean. As I hold this up to the light, I can clearly see where the fabric is and where this box number 1 is. And remember, this is key, that we're not only trying to cover the box that's outlined here, number 1, but also a 1/4 inch all the way around. So I see by holding my fabric up to the light, or my paper up to the light, that we've done that. So there's an acronym, TSP, and this is how it was taught to me, and that's when the light bulb really turned on. Bing, right? I get it. TSP is trim, sew, and press. So I'm going to start heating my iron up now, and I'll give you a couple options with the pressing step once we get to that. But the first thing we need to do is trim, and you're like, trim how? This is where the add a quarter rulers come into play, and this is the smaller add a quarter ruler. We also have the larger. For the series 2, we only are using the smaller one because we have 4 motifs. In our initial series, it was a single motif, and sometimes the shorter ruler was not quite long enough. And that's why the combo of the small and the large is a great choice, and it's available in the pink or yellow. But for today's project, this is more than sufficient for us. We'll be using the little one. I'm going to put my add a quarter right on that dark drawn line there. And we're going to fold our paper back. And we're just going to crease that with our fingernail. And I'm going to press that back just a little bit further. And as I flip the add a quarter around, there's actually a lip. This ruler doesn't sit flat. It sits at an angle, kind of an incline. And the purpose of that, and this is uniquely made for foundation paper piecing, is I lock that in and I just slide it up and down to make sure it's locked in right at that edge. Then I trim. And now I'm ready for my next piece, which happens to be E2. So I can see that when I place my piece here and I turn this back, once again, I'm going to hold this up to the light and say, have I covered my shape as well as a 1/4 inch all the way around? And I can see that I've done that. So holding this in position, carefully turning this over, I'm going to add a pin here. And it's going to be very important for us to start sewing just a little bit before our line, sewing directly on the line, and I'm going to sew right off the paper. I always want to make sure the dash line is where we're ultimately going to be trimming everything up to. So we want to make sure we're sewing all the way to that dash line or beyond, but don't stop short. We don't want to just stop here, because if we start trimming all the way around, that fabric is not really attached to the paper, and that's going to be important to us. The other thing I want to call your attention to is a size 70 needle. This is a Microtex needle, and this is a certain kind of almost like equipment that I grab out when I'm doing foundation paper piecing. Add a quarter, my size 70 needles. If I'm in a crowded space, maybe at a quilt retreat where there's limited access to irons, I'm going to also grab my roll and press, and I'm going to grab my Roxannes. This is kind of my standard equipment just to begin with. And I'm also going to be sewing on a shortened stitch length of a 1.5. The reason being that we're putting as many stitches as we can in a short distance, because later on, we're going to remove that paper. And by the shortened stitch length, we're also perforating the paper, which makes it even easier to remove that. So let's head over to the machine, and I'll start just a short distance above my solid line, sewing directly on the line and off the paper. So remembering the TSP, we trimmed, we sew, now we press. As I mentioned, maybe you're coming to one of our quilt retreats, and someday I want to see you there, by the way. We have one coming up here soon. I can roll that back and either do my roll and press. And if I'm at a quilt retreat and I know I have to wait in line, I'm grabbing for this because I want to keep going. But if you're like, no, I really like my iron, okay, and you have access to that, press that back. However you choose to do that, that's fine. So far we've got our 2 pieces. Now, the same process. Trim, sew, press, and you do it again and again and again. So easy to learn. Not intuitive. I found this very confusing initially, but very doable. Again, add a quarter on the line, fold the paper back, give a crease, check, did I hit that, or do I need to make any adjustments? Let's see how we did. I'm going to adjust that just a little bit. There we go. Add a quarter right along the edge. Trim. E3. Isn't that nice to be organized? Once you have all your fabrics cut, I get them organized. E1, E2, E3, all the way. Don't just leave them kind of scattered, hoping you're going to grab for the right piece. Go ahead and get everything organized so you don't grab for the wrong fabric. Again, as I put that in position and I check, hold it up to the light or your light box, I'm in a good spot. I'm going to repeat that process. I'm going to sew from off the paper on the line and stop just a few stitches after. Once again, let's press that. Let me get rid of that thread there. Okay, so I'm going to take us a little bit further. I want to definitely sew 4, 5, and 6. I want you to see this tiny little sliver, and don't let that intimidate you. The thing I've discovered about foundation paper when I used to look at a Judy Niemeyer and think, I will never be able to do that. Yes, you can. It starts with understanding this process, and you repeat it again and again and again. And with patience and time, there isn't anything you can't do following the same process. And isn't that exciting to know that the sky's the limit, right? There is nothing you won't be able to do, and I love that. So here, as we lay our add a quarter along this line, we know that we stitched a couple stitches above. Don't worry about tearing that paper, remembering that it's going to be removed later on anyway. So as I lay this down, I'll put my add a quarter to provide some stability. And if I need to rip the paper, not quite like that, but down here, it's no problem. Even if you rip it up here, it doesn't matter. This is just a guide for where you need to be next. Lay that over, fold that good and flat. We'll add our quarter, and it looks like we are running out of room. I'm going to go ahead and use that larger add a quarter here and trim. If all you have at home, by the way, is the smaller one, let me just show you that. It's not a big deal. Go ahead and do that and just slide up, okay? Don't think that you can't keep going if you just have the small one. You can, you just have to slide it up, but that's why the combo is a great choice. That way you don't have to ever slide that up, or when you move on to that bigger project that I just talked about, you already have the equipment you need to do that. So once that's completed, back to the front we go. Going, okay, we can see here that we have a nice big piece. We're going to lay that on. I'm just going to simulate that. Holding that up, definitely have that. And that's what I do. I just kind of simulate that if I don't have my light box, or if I have my light box, I lay that over top and I can clearly see, have I covered all of number 4 plus a 1/4 inch all the way around? And if we have, be carefully flip over, pin. And this is a bigger piece. We might need to pin twice so nothing shifts on us. And let's go repeat that. Trim, sew, press, trim, sew, press, over and over. In this instance here, I'm definitely not starting all the way over here. I'm starting a few stitches before, sewing directly on the line and stopping right here. Because remember, we have to come back later to do piece 14. If you just came off the edge, you're ripping all of that back and there's no need to do that. You just want to always remember that any piece here on these edges that are on the outside should always go right off the edge all the way to your dash line, but not these interior pieces. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And the more you do this, the more you begin to recognize what is needed and where to start sewing. Okay, trim, sew, press. We know what's coming up next. Now that little tiny piece. So not different. Add a quarter. Let me get rid of that here. Add a quarter. If I had tape here, I would just tape that, right? So I don't accidentally rip it further. It's not hurting anything, but I could see me catching that. So if that does happen to you, just put a piece of tape there. Remembering, it's going to be removed later. It just needs to be there for a little bit. All right, let's roll back. See how we did. Oh, I need to go back just a little bit further. Once we have our spot, the add a quarter comes in. Here comes our little piece of red. And it's at an angle. So let's make sure, let's start saying, okay, I think it's going to be there. And when it's flipped over, did I cover it? And I can see, yes, that's a really good spot. So just like we've been doing, pin, pin, but before we sew, let's make sure nothing shifted. I'm going to move that. There we go. I've had that happen where I think I'm holding it steady, I pin from the front and I sew and it shifted. Something happened, right? And I can see that's a good spot. I'm going to actually shift that down just a little bit. There we go. Okay. A few stitches before on the line, stop a few stitches afterward. My pin's going to be in the way here. Move that. Trim, sew, press. I thought this little addition of that red was just such a neat effect of the garland of the tree. All right, for our next one, just like we've been doing, fold it back. Add a quarter. Piece 6. This is such a pretty fabric. Comes into play. Put it in position. Fold it over. I hold it up to the light. That's a great spot. And I'll sew this one on, and then you get the idea. Even if it's a little shape, don't let that intimidate you. No big deal. Just make sure it's in place so nothing's moving on you. And I better move that pin because I can see that one's going to be in the way. Put that right there. And I'm going to actually adjust that. I could adjust that up to that, but remember, 1/4 of an inch is coming in here. We're good. I'll prove that to you right now. If it's not meeting exactly up there, you're still fine. You can see we've got a lot of thread going in there. Remember, my stitch length right now is a 1.5. Normally I'm sewing on a 2.5. A lot of thread is going in there. All right, let's once again press this back. Look at that. Look at that little detail added in there. So sweet, right? And then again, TSP, TSP, all the way until this is what you have. This is what it looks like. Isn't that funny? It's got these little wings here. Once you have that, now it's time to trim on your dashed line. So you're just going to make a little bit of space. You don't need to have a spinning mat to do this, but if you do, why not, right? If you've got tools, use them, right? Use them to their maximum so they're your benefit. And the more precise you can cut on this, the better. It's just going to make the final assembly of your 4 blocks with the sashing that much better. So we'll trim everything out. And now we have our darling little Christmas tree here. This is where you begin removing that paper, right? It's easy on the sides that have the bigger pieces. That's not a problem. But those little nooks and crannies, especially these little things where my fingers just don't want to go, this is where I'm grabbing for the gypsy quilters, little tweezers. These pieces drive me crazy, even the little ones in the corners. Sometimes it's just to get it started, and then I can get it with my fingers. So if you have those little nooks and crannies and they're bugging you too, just grab those. Of course, you'll complete all 4 of your Christmas trees. That's where the sashing and the cornerstone comes into play. And then before, we don't stitch anything down at this point. We love to put our batting, our backing, and then with our 2-piece thread set, we're doing some top quilting. Super fun. It makes everything look really just embossed and really just quilted, and it gives it this dimension. And then of course we're making our hanging sleeve that's on the back, our binding. But again, if you're just now joining us going, what is this foundation paper piecing about? And what's this bit about hanging sleeves and bindings? We've covered all those steps in our very first videos. So you can see kits are the way to go, right? When I get something in the mail, I want to start now. I actually started to want to start the day before, right? I love it when everything is ready and I can just get going. So head to the website now. Kits are flying off the shelf because people have figured out they want the convenience of this to be able to start making today. Be sure to pick up the Foundation Paper Piecing 2 December kit, the thread set, the others in the series as well as series 1, and subscribe. Let your friends know while this may be the last project of this series for this year, you know there's more coming in this series and so much more beyond. I look forward to seeing you next month as we continue Foundation Paper Piecing Series 2 for January.